Picture this. Red and blue lights flash behind you. You pull over. The officer walks up to your window and says, "Good afternoon. Do you know why I pulled you over today?" Most drivers think this is just conversation. It isn't. At that moment, the officer hasn't decided how difficult this stop is going to be. He hasn't decided whether you're getting a warning. He hasn't decided whether he's going to spend 2 minutes with you or 20. And in the next few seconds, one mistake gives him exactly what he's looking for. That's why today we're covering 5 tricks that can end almost any traffic stop faster. Not because they magically make tickets disappear. Not because they turn you into a lawyer, but because they help you avoid the single decision point that causes traffic stops to spiral out of control. And once you understand that decision point, you'll never look at a traffic stop the same way again. The trap starts with a question almost every driver has heard. Do you know why I pulled you over? Most people immediately start talking. Yeah, I was probably speeding. I know I shouldn't have rolled through that stop sign. I'm sorry, I was looking at my phone. The officer listens. And just like that, the encounter changes. Why? Because most drivers think the question is about being polite. The officer is often trying to gather information. He's evaluating your awareness, your honesty, your attitude. If knowing your rights matters to you, subscribe now. Share this with someone who needs it, and drop your opinion below. And sometimes whether you'll volunteer information he didn't even ask for. Watch how this usually happens. Officer, do you know why I pulled you over? Driver, yeah, I was probably doing about 15 over. Officer, 15 over? Driver, maybe 20. Now the driver has supplied information the officer didn't need to work for. The stop just became easier for the officer and harder for the driver. This leads directly to the first trick that ends traffic stops faster. Answer the question without volunteering information. That's it. Not rude, not argumentative, just controlled. The phrase is simple. I don't know, officer. That's the phrase. I don't know, officer. Memorize it. Because this is where the decision point begins. The officer asks a question. The driver decides whether to start talking or stay focused. Everything changes right there. Let's look at the wrong response. Officer, do you know why I pulled you over? Driver, yeah, I was speeding. Sorry. Officer reaction? The officer immediately has more information. The conversation expands. More questions follow. More discussion follows. More opportunities for mistakes follow. Now compare that to this. Officer, do you know why I pulled you over? Driver, I don't know, officer. Officer, your speed was recorded at 52 and a 35. Driver, okay. Notice what happened. The officer still communicates the reason for the stop, but the driver doesn't create additional issues. The stop stays focused. That's trick number 1. Don't volunteer information. Now let's move to trick number 2. Provide documents and stop narrating. Many drivers do this. Officer, license and registration, please. Driver, absolutely. Just so you know, I was late for work, my wife called me, and I had to pick up my son. None of that helps. Every extra explanation creates new conversation, and every new conversation creates new opportunities for follow-up questions. The fastest traffic stops are usually the simplest. Officer asks for documents. Driver provides documents, nothing more. Remember, the goal is not to win an argument. The goal is to avoid expanding the encounter. Trick number 3. Don't answer questions that aren't necessary. Here's a common example. Officer, where are you headed today? Most drivers immediately launch into a story. 5 minutes later, they're discussing work, travel plans, family members, and schedules. The stop is now much larger than it started. A short response keeps the encounter moving. Officer, where are you headed today? Driver, just heading home. Short, simple, complete. No extra details. No unnecessary conversation. Again, the decision point is whether you expand the stop or keep it focused. Now let's talk about trick number 4. Never argue roadside. This is where many encounters go wrong. The officer says, "You failed to signal." The driver immediately responds, "No, I didn't." Officer, "Yes, you did." Driver, "No, I didn't." Now both people are discussing something that won't be resolved on the shoulder of the road. The stop gets longer. Tension increases. Nobody benefits. A better response looks like this. Officer, you failed to signal. Driver, okay, that's it. Not an admission, not an argument. Just acknowledgement that you heard the statement. Many drivers don't realize how powerful that is. Arguments often extend traffic stops. Calm responses often shorten them. And now we arrive at trick number 5, the most important one. Recognize the decision point before it happens. Because all 5 tricks are really the same trick. The officer asks a question. The officer makes a statement. The officer introduces a topic. And the driver must decide, am I going to expand this encounter? Or am I going to keep it focused? That's the decision point. Not when the lights come on. Not when the officer reaches the window. The moment you decide whether to start talking. That's where traffic stops change direction. Most drivers think they get in trouble because they don't know enough law. That's usually not what happens. They get in trouble because they talk too much. They volunteer information. They argue. They explain. They speculate. And before they realize it, a simple stop has become a lengthy investigation. So let's put everything together. Officer, do you know why I pulled you over? Driver, I don't know, officer. Officer, license registration. Driver, certainly. Officer, where are you headed? Driver, just heading home. Officer, you were speeding. Driver, okay. Notice the pattern. No hostility, no confrontation. No lectures, no unnecessary information. Just calm, controlled responses. Now let's briefly discuss the legal foundation. In the United States, drivers generally must comply with lawful requirements during a traffic stop, such as providing identification and vehicle documents when required by law. At the same time, people are generally not required to volunteer information beyond what is legally required. The key principle isn't winning a debate with the officer. It's understanding that every additional statement can create additional questions. That's why the exact phrase matters so much. I don't know. Officer. Simple, memorable, easy to use, and most importantly, it prevents the decision point from immediately working against you. So remember, the trap is the invitation to start talking. The decision point is the moment you choose whether to volunteer information. And the exact phrase is, I don't know, officer, because the smartest drivers aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who recognize the decision point before the officer does.